for the introduction. You can hear me. Yeah? Cool. I'm Nikolai. I'm working with Magento for 4 years now and with software for all my life. I'm CEO at Code for Business, a Magento agency in Aachen, which is located in Germany. And I'm focused on process quality and code reviews in my work. So I don't write as much code as I want myself, but I have to care about the quality of our code. Short agenda, motivation, why do we need code quality? Then general code quality, some very basic rules. Then some Magento-specific stuff. And in the end, if we find time and you find questions, then questions and answers. I Googled for Magento quality, and it didn't look like it's a topic, code quality, at least when you search this term. Here it's image quality. So what is code quality good for? Well, our customers want functionality, usability, security, availability, and reliability. And like internal code quality is like code is easy to read, easy to understand, and easy to change. Well, and the problem is we need to work on the internal code quality to supply external code quality for our customers in the long run. I mean, you can have luck, or you can just be very smart and you get good software for your customers running, and it is of bad internal code quality, but that doesn't work in the long run. That doesn't work if you have more than 2 employees. So general code quality. Well, classes and methods are made for structuring things. Object-oriented design at the end is made for structuring your code. Like the computer can read very long files without problems, but humans cannot. So, and this structuring only works if the measures of structuring are of mid-size, if they are actually structuring something. That means, like, classes should be around 1 to 200 lines of code, methods around 3 to 20 lines of code. This is not always done. Like if you look into the core code, it's not always done there neither. Maybe in Magento 2, I don't know. You can tell us. But that's a good idea in order to have to use these things to structure your code. Then the main source of documentation is the code itself, in the best case. If you have a lot of comments in your code, then that's usually a sign for it needs to be explained. But then, like the code itself, that this is speaking is very important. So variable names and method names are really an important thing to make your code readable. And if you have variable names like C for a customer, then you won't be able to understand it the next day. Still bad, but used a lot, is things like you just call a customer when you know more about it. A good idea is to like really give it in something that is expressing what it should do, a customer to add. When you create that, and then you add, I don't know, the name and the surname and so on, and then you always know in a for loop, it is the customer that is going to be saved to the database when you're ready. Speaking methods is the same thing. Like deep clone tells you more than copy. You really know the complete object with all sub-objects is going to like duplicate it, and the method gives back something that is completely independent of the original object. With copy, you know basically nothing. It might be that it's just only the object is copied, or you should avoid dead code and unread variables. Like some programming languages tell you about that automatically. PHP is not really, but a good IDE can help you with that. So that if you have a variable, but it's not ever read, then that's not good. It's obviously junk code that is somewhere in there and that shouldn't happen. Martin Fowler, do you know him? Refactoring, that book? It's a really good book. It's quite old, but it still explains the essentials of improving existing code. And to Martin Fowler, the code smell, bad smell, of code that is worst is duplicated code. So you have the same source code in two places. You can make it even worse if you have like one function with duplicated code that is slightly different. It does the same thing, but it's a bit different. And what you should do is try to put it into a method or into inheritance, and like that's really bringing a lot. Having the problem that with the module architecture of Magento, you sometimes have the trade-off of having duplicated code or module dependencies. Most of the time you can avoid both of it, but sometimes you have the trade-off. You should, whenever you can, you should go for easy solutions. Like one thing I did was I was implementing a CVS client, an old version management, and I constructed a class hierarchy with interfaces and so on. And then my colleagues told me, well, you could have used 5 static methods. And of course, that's not elegant. But what I did was over-engineering. There was a relatively simple problem, and I created a class hierarchy and all that stuff, and it's not necessary. Try to keep it as simple as possible. When you have ifs or for loops or so on, you usually open a curly brace, and then you indent your code. So if you do that more than 3 times, then it's hard to understand what's in there. Like you opened an if, then a for, then another for. So when you're doing a command, you have to remember that it's under one condition and in 2 loops. And that is hard to do for most people. Maybe you can do that, but your colleague might not. And maybe he needs to change it afterwards. So even if you're smart enough to do that, it's probably not a good idea. If you have an indentation higher than 5, then your code is basically junk. It's not really readable for human beings anymore. And try to avoid magic numbers. So if you have a 7 somewhere in your code, then what is the 7? Is it a constant like p, or is it something that you should be able to configure? If something like this pops up, you should think, what is this really? And in most of the cases, it doesn't belong into the code. Tools are not really a part of code quality, but they can support code quality. First thing, and I've really seen a lot of agencies that don't do that. Also, they ship Magento shops is user version management. Like most popular nowadays is Git, but it's not really important. Even if you use SVN or CVS maybe, it's important that you use a version management to track all the changes you did in your development. If you don't do it now and you come home, then this is the thing you should do first. Like install it, try to learn it. It's 1 day effort to be able to use it, and it's like saving you really a lot of time. There's no reason to not use a version management today. Same thing with the development environment, but most people are using one like Zen Studio or PHP Storm, Eclipse PDT, NetBeans. I think that PHP Storm with Magento, like Ben said, is at the moment the most advanced IDE for Magento, and you should probably use that. Other, like not that, but still important tools are debuggers. So you can actually see in your IDE at which point of your application you are. It's highlighted. You see all the variables. And that's not only good for finding bugs or working with your code when something is going wrong. It's also really helpful for young developers to understand what's going on. Because you see the program running step by step. You see what's in the variables, you see what's in the attributes, and that's really helpful for learning for young developers. And then automated tests, a bit more sophisticated. Like you generally have two options. Functional black box tests, so you're testing the HTML site, or white box tests, usually based on PHP unit, where you're testing your code, your classes. Like Selenium black box tests are worth the effort, usually also in small projects, while white box testing is maybe a bit more for bigger projects. But that's arguable. Like other people would say that differently, or when you have a team that is always doing white box testing, then you probably don't stop it because the project is too small. So that's the general stuff. It was very quick and short, but it's only the basics. I think I also tried to write down the basics that are not really arguable. It's also good to have coding conventions in your team where you work differently from other teams that are arguable, but you need to agree on them. And yeah, that's something that I didn't want to mention here in my short presentation. Okay, about Magento. What should you do in Magento? Okay, it looked like you want to say something. No, you don't.
I'm here to
okay, let's
give the microphone. Anyone questions? Come on. Must have some quality-related questions.
Oh, that would be great. Like, I'm really happy if you have questions or if you want to discuss something with me.
Come on, don't be ashamed. Just a quick question.
Okay, good. Maybe
Nobody?
it's...
No,
well,
no
now it's the more Magento-related stuff, so maybe there are more questions. The idea of, or one of the ideas of Magento was to make the update from one version to another simple. Like the older e-commerce systems, there you had to change the core code, and when the next version came, you played in the next version and all your changes were gone. That's not very efficient. So Magento supports you in writing your changes into other files, so then when the update comes, you update the core files and everything is still working in the ideal world. So what's definitely not a good idea is to put your changes into files that come from Magento. Then, next update, everything's gone. Not that obvious is like you shouldn't do that with third-party modules neither. I did that sometime. I don't know. Maybe you as well. Try to do the same thing with them that you would do with core modules. Try to write rewrites or observe events and change them by doing that. For example, ecomdev, check it out. The one-page checkout has a lot of events that it's throwing, and you can just hook in and change the way it's working. But that's not working with all of the modules. However, rewrites are usually possible and should be done because, like when you're updating your Magento, you're probably also updating your extensions, and if you had changes in the extensions, same game, your changes are gone. No changes in language files. I did that wrong as well. Like I put it into the language core files. You can just put it into separate files in the modules, and you can also retranslate your cart to a basket or whatever inside other modules. So you can retranslate core translations in your own module, and that will survive the next update of the language files that you should do when you do the update of your application. correct use of code pools is important. Even some extension suppliers don't do that completely correct. They give you extensions and install in local, which is not a good idea. Like local is for your project-specific modules. Community is for things you share among different projects, or you get it from the community, or it's a third-party module. In core is the core. Yeah, you shouldn't change it. And then you have lib for external libraries. But what is being done? Like Magento first looks in local whether there is something, the class loader, then it looks in community, then in core. So if you have something in community, like you can still change it in local by just putting a PHP file there. That's not elegant. Huh? That's not really the way you should do it, but that is one like technical reason why you should care about the code pools. And then it's just, again, convention, that you know where to expect what. Like, I saw some people copying, like when you work on a template, we're actually specialized on backend development, so this topic is like I keep it small. But we saw some agencies just copying the base folder of the template into their template, and like they overwrote everything. Also, many of the files were unchanged. So what's happening again is Magento update. You want to see new features, but you won't see them because like you copied everything, and well, your template is just not showing the new features. So that's kind of avoidable. So you should just copy the files where you actually intend to make changes. And like the short, yeah, short to remember, never change code that is not from you. Like when you get a third-party module, don't change it, rewrite it in your own module. Encapsulation of modules. Modules should work independently. To do so, they should have little dependencies between like two other modules. Like when you're creating your own module, then you can depend on the Magento modules. That's not really a problem because you know it's there. But like your modules shouldn't depend on each other, or at least they should depend on each other least possible. Sometimes you have the trade-off between you have dependencies or code duplication, and then you have to see what you're doing. We try to avoid it by separating the functionalities so that it doesn't happen. And if we cannot, we usually go for code duplication instead of dependencies. The module should be independent of the template, something that is done wrong a lot. Like when you switch off the template, then a lot of the functionality goes away. That's not that good. So what you should do is you should have layout updates, and you can relatively easy put them into the config XML and say, well, for this specific area, I want, instead of the original layout XML, I want my layout XML, and you put that into the base folder. And the templater who's working on later, he's like templating your generated XML file, your layout XML file, and your PHTML files. So yeah, that's basically the idea. So if you start the module, then it should work. Also, you don't have a template installed, or the base template installed. And that is the way it should be. Like, this is more effort, but it also means you can use your modules in other projects without copying parts of the template somehow to another project. And the template should be independent of modules. So like if you switch off one or two modules and then the template crashes, then that's a huge problem if you want to find bugs and you want to switch off certain modules and also to get them from one project to another. Like what we usually do is we have one module that is supporting the template and that needs to be switched on. So it's all the helper functions for the template that we want to put into blocks and so on. So they are all in a helper module, and I think that's okay. That's not a problem for code quality. I really like this slide. It's minimal changes. Like Magento is a good, it's an amazing e-commerce system, and it can do like most of the stuff out of the box. And when you have a certain feature that you want to have, often it's possible to just change a little thing with the minimum amount of code. Like, and if you have less code, then you have less things other people have to read, have to understand. You have less bugs. So no code is good code. Huh? Code that you don't write doesn't make you problems afterwards. Instead, try to use existing Magento functions. Like, try to hook into something that exists already. Like, 2 examples I have from my development career is like we put something on GitHub, which is make a gift. Under specific conditions, you get an additional item that you don't have to pay, and it's showing up in your cart. And, well, it's implemented as a price rule. So it's 2 small observers and 1 layout update. And I think it's like in total, I didn't count, but it's 50 lines of code or something like this. And you could like do that really differently, re-implement the when you put it into the cart and when not. So there are a lot of options to do that differently. The next example is tier prices for custom options. That's actually something that every supplier of merchandises needs. Like, you have pens, and you want to print something on it, and you need tiers. So 100 pens are less expensive than 2 times 50, but you also need that for the printing. And Magento doesn't support that out of the box. And like the obvious way to do it would be to change the price logic. You just go into the price logic and you put something on top of it. But it's going to lead probably into a lot of problems. We didn't try. But what we did was we generated an additional option for every tier and every original custom option. So there's printing 20, printing 50, printing 100. And in the checkout, there is a very, very simple module that just takes the right tier. So you have added printing as a custom option, and you have 50 items in there. So you're ticking printing 50, and in the back end, you have the price there for printing 50, for printing 100, and so on. So that's like you're relatively safe of problems afterwards, because the rest is Magento standard. And if somebody is coming with a credit memo, like it doesn't have another price logic because you just use the standard Magento price logic for custom options. So if you want to, you can look into that stuff. I'm happy if you do. Model view controller. Like when I started to work with Magento, I thought model view controller was something different, wasn't it? But like really important in Magento is to separate between code and template. I mean, that's really important that you get that right. And I saw a lot of examples in emergency projects where this wasn't done, like where you have a lot of HTML code in the blocks and you're generating it and putting it together, or where you had a lot of computation in the templates, and that's hard to understand and not expected by the person who reads the code. So try to avoid it. And then like you can try to implement more of model view controller. So data-based functions, like full name for a customer or so, should be in models. Logic and controllers and observers. Helper functions for the templates should be in blocks. And observers are models by convention, like they are somehow in the model folder, and they are, but yeah, it's just by convention. I don't think it makes terrible sense, but they belong there. setup scripts, like I guess most of you use setup scripts to add attributes or to add columns to tables, and that's good. You could do it by hand as well. That wouldn't be good. But you can also put configuration and content of CMS pages, categories into the setup scripts, and that makes it a lot more likely that your deployment is easy and simple. You can copy everything from your live system into your test system and just like deploy everything, look whether it works. If it worked, then you have like the hope that it works again when you put it onto the live server, especially if the environment is very similar. So that really helps reducing the pressure when you deploy. Yeah. So it's a good thing to use. Third-party modules. Like the customer, if you talk to him, he says, well, just install this. It's plug and play. But you know, it's plug and pray. Like you hope for the best. And the best is usually not coming. So use modules of well-known resources, like Magento or ecomdev, or I don't get anything from them. But yeah, there are some sources where you know they are quite reliable, and yeah, you should use these if you can. Unfortunately, they cover only like a very limited part of what you want and what you need. Then a detailed code analysis is an alternative, but it's expensive. Yeah, like you need a day, 1.5. Like most of the time, it's actually going faster because after 2 hours, you know this module sucks, and we're not going to install it. But yeah, I mean that doesn't help your customer. Like. Avoid modules with encrypted code, IonCube, or licensing modules, class loader. Like we have no project where we still have IonCube encrypted modules used. Like talk to your customer. This is a major risk that like usually the code quality of external modules is not good. But if they encrypt it, it's probably not better. That's kind of clear. You can also use like they're big module suppliers that don't supply terribly good code, but it's working halfway if you don't install too many of them. That's another option, especially in small shops. In big shops, it's often a better option to rewrite this stuff, to buy the module, get some ideas from it, and rewrite it. Some further reading, coding guidelines. There's a Zend framework coding standard, which is very complete, but not 100% used by Magento. There are other standards they used. Some of them are in the Magento extension developer's guide. I read that not that long ago. I was surprised. A lot of good information in it, so you should definitely read it. And like the most important rule is imitate the core. Like program the way that the core is programmed as well, with some, like don't imitate everything. If it's obvious that it's not beautiful, then don't imitate that. But generally, the Magento core code is good, and it's worth imitating it, and it's what the other developers expect. That is what they expect to see. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm happy to receive questions, to get questions.
Questions, anybody? Okay, great.
Hello. I was wondering if you have anything to say about the PHP doc, like the comments and everything which we would write in front of functions.
Yeah.
How much is that related to code quality, and what would you think about it? Should we use it or should we not?
Like we comment every method, and that is the comments that we usually do. We don't do comments inside methods. We don't use PHP doc, but we comment every method. And I think that's useful. If you use PHP doc, that's probably also a good idea. Like in Java docs, I didn't ever produce them. Huh? Like I used it in the IDE a bit, but method comments are definitely a good thing. Not because they're explaining what it's doing really, but because you can read the comment and decide that you don't need to do anything with the method. You can, oh, that's not what I looked for. Then you can skip the method. That's the main thing, because if you don't need to know in detail, you need to read the code anyways.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? No. Thank you very much, Nikolai.
Yeah, thank you very much.